Are you struggling to grow your chest, or are you the guy that's always been told that you're delt dominant? Well, today this video is for you. We're going to get into 3 categories of places that you can look to make sure that you're getting the most out of your chest training and actually adequately stimulating your pecs so that they grow. So if you're interested in this, stick around and we'll get into this now. So when we're looking at pec training, first things first, obviously it's important to understand the anatomy of our pec. And that's going to get into the first thing I want to talk about, which is our arm path. A lot of people will opt for a more abducted arm path, which isn't the worst thing in the world. You're not going to get shoulder cancer. It's not training your pec, but we're going to get probably substantially less range of motion from the pec. So look at the pec and what it does. Okay, like origin insertion, we're looking kind of like sternum. It's going to go across, attached to my shoulder over here. So when I'm getting stretched in my pec, I want to be able to get adequately into shoulder extension because my pec's going to do shoulder extension and it's going to do adduction. So it's bring my arm closer to my midline. So I kind of want to be able to get here and get across to here. Now, if I'm more abducted, so my elbow is more up, it's hard for me to get my elbow behind my body, meaning kind of where my pec crosses my shoulder joint, it's not going to get as much stretch, right? So here, intuitively, if I kind of touch my pec while I do that, I get more of a stretch with my arm behind me than I do with my arm in front of me. So generally speaking, going for a more adducted, let's say 60 to 45 degrees of abduction. So from here, 45, 60, somewhere in here, going to give us a little bit more stretch than being fully elbows out to the side. That's the first thing. So that could be exercise selection, doing things that are less like barbell bench and more things that are like dumbbells, cables, or even we're setting up on a machine, like with the Atlantis machines, going more of a neutral grip, or could be simply just tucking our elbows a little bit on something that is more of a pronated grip. So generally speaking, just get your arm path to be a little bit elbows tucked more to your body. That'll give us a bit more stretch to the pec and help us adequately simulate the pecs a little bit better. Now, the next thing is going to be understanding the orientation of our rib cage. Why is that important? Well, muscles like the lats and the pecs that kind of span the rib cage, the orientation of the rib cage is going to have an influence on our mechanics, right? It kind of makes sense. So very often people will overly flare at the rib cage or they'll overly have their sternum pressed down. That's going to influence the relative positioning of our pecs to our shoulder joint, right? So if I'm pressing my sternum is shoved down, it would make sense why I'm struggling to get length in my pecs because I have them in this compressed position. Or if I'm overly flared, it would make sense why it's hard for me to actually get relative shortening to my pecs. So it's also going to change orientation in relation to the direction of our arm path. Generally speaking, what we want to do is kind of identify, are we somebody who overly flares or somebody who overly has their sternum pressed down? Let's get to neutral. So if I'm somebody who has a problem of my sternum being down, I want to just cue chest up. If I'm overly flared, I want to cue this chest down a little bit. I also want to make sure that my sternum is in a neutral position. That's going to line up with my arm path really well. So we don't want to be hypermobile with the rib cage. We don't want to be hypomobile. We want to make sure we're kind of in a neutral position. So draw some attention to this and make sure that it's actually going to fit our arm path. The last thing I've already covered in another video, which is generally eliminate redundancies in our training. So if I want to grow my pecs, let's make sure I'm getting some variability in what I'm doing. That doesn't mean confusing the muscles or anything weird like that. It just means making sure I'm not doing, 5 horizontal pressing movements in the same day. So I'm not going to do a barbell bench, dumbbell flat bench, machine flat bench, and the pec deck and a push-up, right? Like all 5 of those are essentially the same thing. Maybe different in loadability and length tension relationship, but it's overwhelmingly looks more the same than different. So look at your training. Make sure you're not doing a lot of the same things. Also make sure you're choosing exercises that allow you to train your pecs through a fullish range of motion and train them hard. So if we're doing a lot of free weights, maybe we throw in some machines, maybe throw in some isolation stuff like a pec deck where we can get a little bit more length to our pecs, stuff like that. But generally speaking, eliminate redundancy. Make sure exercise selection is actually adequate for the goal that we want to get done. Outside of that, cover those first 2 boxes. Just to recap, fix our arm path, make sure that we're not overly flared. Fix our sternum, make sure that our sternum isn't pressed down or overly flared up. And then make sure that we're not just doing the same thing 5 times in the same session. Add in some variability and make sure your program is not overly redundant. If you do those 3 things, your pecs are going to grow. You're going to be happy with yourself. I can almost guarantee it.